Hello and welcome to the Dr. Hibernica Comics Review. I'm your host, Dr. Hibernica. This week, we're going to be doing something a little bit different with the show's format, so make sure you let me know what you think. We're going to be looking at the movement number 1 by Gail Simone from the New 52. It's a little bit different from what we've seen a lot of so far in comic books, both in Marvel and DC. Now, it's true that right now, DC is setting up some manner of conflict between the Justice League of America, the Justice League, and the so-called Justice League Dark. They really hate that name. But overall, Superman will go out of his way to help a police officer or to rescue a fireman. What happens when the superpowered beings aren't working with the establishment? What happens when they're directly opposed to them? This is the question that comes up in both Dial H by China Mieville, also out of the New 52, and Gail Simone's The Movement. Also, this week I get to go off on a mostly unrelated tangent about Alan Moore once again. So, there you go, another good week. How is The Movement number 1 by Gail Simone? Let's jump in and find out. The cover, by Amanda Connor, shows several of the protagonists gathered in front of an odd sigil surrounding the moon. Not all of these characters are ones we'll meet in number 1, but it's a safe bet that they're all members of the movement. This is a strong, catching cover. My first impression of it says that these people will be our protagonists, and that there is something organizing them that is a little bit more mysterious. I also think that it shows a sense of unity within the group that you might not necessarily see in a cover for some other organizations. Time will tell if that impression is right or not. The movement is written in the same political climate that created things like the Occupy movement and hacktivist groups like Anonymous. The titular group, also going by the name Channel M when appropriate, seems to be anonymous on steroids with superpowers. Within a few minutes' time, they're able to scramble a flash mob to put out police corruption and push the people to fight back. I'm guessing that the initials on the mobile devices stand for Intensive Care Unit, but I could be missing something and that could be completely wrong. Like Anonymous, members of the movement have adopted a mask motif. Each mask seems slightly different, which seems like something of a flaw if the goal is anonymity, as opposed to Anonymous and their V for Vendetta Guy Fawkes mask. Also, hi Rorschach! Gail Simone got her start with the major publishing houses with the Simpsons books for Bongo. After that, she worked on Deadpool for Marvel, but eventually left the title after it became Agent X due to conflicts with Marvel editorial. She moved over to DC, where she worked on Birds of Prey, Action Comics, and Wonder Woman. In the New 52, Simone worked on Fury of Firestorm and Batgirl initially, but left Firestorm after issue 6. In December, she announced that she had been fired from Batgirl until fan backlash led to DC editorial returning her to the title. The book introduces us to a few of the players in the movement and hint at some of their powers. Mouse, the Prince of Rats, Catharsis, who has awesome steampunk-style wings and a weird hit girl thing going on, Tremor, who can control the earth, and Virtue, who can read people. Also introduced is Burden, whose powers are pretty undefined so far. We also meet several members of the Coral City Police Department. The CCPD is apparently about as honest and pure as the Gotham City Police Department. Some officers seem to be on the up and up, but others need a nice long talk with Internal Affairs. Simone's writing is strong here, but so far the only characters with any kind of background information are Burden and the CCPD captain. The art here is mostly pretty good. The characters generally look decent, and the body positioning is usually fairly believable. There are exceptions to this, however. I wouldn't go quite so far as to call this Liefeldian, but it's definitely from the Liefeld school. I tried to match Catharsis' stance here, and found it physically painful. Moments like these are more exception than rule, however. Most of the characters really do look good, including these two in other scenes. And before I get to my final conclusion, I did promise you another Alan Moore tangent. Last week, when I talked about Jupiter's Legacy, I felt like I needed to talk about Watchmen. This week, the movement leads me feeling like I need to talk more about V for Vendetta, but there is one scene that I want to talk about that really channels Watchmen as well. You'll recognize this scene from earlier when I referenced one of the characters looking like Rorschach. I don't think it's a mistake that a character in this scene looks like him. I think this scene is meant to evoke Rorschach's origin story, but with things happening the way he would have liked them to happen. Rorschach was driven to don the mask and trench coat that helped make him into everyone's favorite right-wing nutjob after witnessing the rape of a young woman in a courtyard while the people living in the building next to it either watched or went in and ignored it. Rorschach says that he thinks that it's shameful that no one helped her, and so he committed himself to helping the helpless. Yes, I'm abridging that quite a bit. This scene takes place in an alleyway instead of a courtyard. But now, as Joseph DeWitt attempts to extort his sexual favors, the people do something. The girl is saved, not because there was one person out of 1 million with superpowers who wanted to jump in and save the day, but because the people came together to right a wrong. I expect to see this as a common theme over the course of this book. Batman can be beaten. The entire city of Gotham is a lot harder to take down if they all work together. But I said I was mostly going to make reference to V for Vendetta, and here I am talking about Watchmen again. Like last week, I'm not going to make the claim that the movement is trying to be the next V for Vendetta, but I think that we'll find as we go that the books have some strong thematic similarities. V for Vendetta follows an anarchistic terrorist who is trying to take down a corrupt regime of fascists and return the power to the people, giving them the freedom to think and act without permission from their rulers. Anonymous doesn't use the Guy Fawkes mask because they think that Guy Fawkes, a terrorist who planned to blow up the British monarchy and Parliament to put an end to religious persecution, is a hero. They adopted it because of V for Vendetta. In both the comic and the movie, V managed to get copies of his mask to people all across the country, enabling them to rise up and think for themselves, in complete anonymity. It looks like Channel M has the same thing going on for its supporters. V may have acted superhuman, but in the end he wasn't. A lot of the big names in the movement do seem to have superpowers, which makes sense given the DCU. V for Vendetta wound up being very morally ambiguous, but I won't be surprised to find the movement being a lot less so. Overall, I can't recommend the movement #1 highly enough. Nothing that I can say can possibly express how much I enjoyed reading and rereading this book. The art is overall very beautiful, and Gail Simone's writing easily outstrips most of her contemporaries. There seems to be a growing trend in comic books today of bringing the media back to the socially relevant powerhouse that it was back in the days of Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and other books like it. This is a trend that I really hope will continue, and I'm overjoyed to see names like Gail Simone, Mark Miller, and China Mieville attached to it. If you haven't gone out and picked up the movement #1 yet, why are you sitting here watching my video when you can be on your way to your local comic shop to get a copy? This is Dr. Hibernica, signing off.